Dr. Sarah Chen wiped the sweat from her forehead as she stared at the massive metal shape buried in the red sand. The Australian sun beat down mercilessly on her team of 12 scientists and engineers. They had been digging for 3 weeks, but what they found was beyond anything they had imagined. The alien ship stretched for 800 meters beneath the desert. Most of it was still buried, but the exposed sections showed technology that made Earth's best spacecraft look like toys. Strange symbols covered the dark metal hull. Pipes and cables snaked across the surface in patterns that hurt to look at. Sarah remembered the day the aliens came. 3 years ago, massive ships had appeared in Earth's sky without warning. The world watched in terror as the vessels destroyed every major city in just 2 weeks. London, New York, Tokyo, Moscow, all turned to ash and rubble. The aliens called themselves Zephyrians, though humans only learned this from intercepted transmissions. Then, as suddenly as they arrived, the aliens left. They took nothing with them except the knowledge that humans were helpless against their power. Billions died in those 2 weeks. The survivors spent months just trying to find food and shelter. But one alien ship never made it home. This one crashed in the middle of nowhere, far from any city or military base. The Australian government found it 6 months later, but they kept it secret. Only now, years later, did they allow scientists to study it. Sarah's team set up their camp in a circle around the ship's nose. The massive vessel had hit the ground at an angle, burying most of itself in the hard-packed earth. The impact crater was half a mile wide. Whatever had brought this ship down, it hit hard. "Dr. Chen, you need to see this," called out Marcus Rodriguez, a former NASA engineer who now worked for the Earth Recovery Project. Marcus was one of the few people who understood how spacecraft worked. If anyone could figure out alien technology, it was him. Sarah climbed down into the excavation pit where Marcus was working. He stood next to a hole they had cut in the ship's hull. Inside, dim lights flickered in the darkness. "The power is still on," Marcus said, his voice filled with wonder. "After 3 years buried in the sand, some of their systems are still running." Sarah peered into the hole. The interior was unlike anything she had ever seen. The walls curved in impossible ways, covered with panels that glowed softly. Strange writing covered every surface. The air inside smelled like metal and something else, something clean and sharp. "Have you gone inside yet?" Sarah asked. Marcus shook his head. "I was waiting for you, but I sent a robot in to take pictures. Look at this," he showed her his tablet. The images showed corridors that seemed to bend and twist, rooms filled with equipment that defied understanding, and everywhere signs that the ship had been abandoned in a hurry. "They left everything behind," Marcus said. "Food, tools, even personal items. It's like they just walked away." Dr. Yuki Tanaka, their quantum physics expert, climbed down to join them. She was small and quiet, but her mind was one of the sharpest on Earth. "I've been analyzing the energy readings," she said. "This ship has technology we won't understand for centuries. Their power source alone could supply electricity to half of Australia." Sarah made the decision that would change everything. "We're going in. Full protective gear, take no chances. I want to know what happened here." The inside of the ship was a maze. The corridors were too wide for humans, clearly built for beings much larger than people. The ceiling stretched high above their heads, covered with pipes and cables that pulsed with soft light. They found the first bodies in what looked like a control room. 3 alien corpses sat at stations covered with panels and screens. The aliens were tall, maybe 8 feet, with long arms and legs. Their skin was gray and smooth, and they had large black eyes. They had been dead for years. "They didn't die from the crash," Marcus observed, examining one of the bodies. "Look at this." He pointed to a device attached to the alien's head. "I think they killed themselves rather than be trapped here." Sarah felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ship's cold air. These beings had preferred death to being stranded on Earth. What did that say about how they viewed humans? They spent hours exploring the ship. Most of it was damaged beyond repair. Huge sections had been torn open by the crash. Equipment lay scattered everywhere. But some areas were intact, protected by emergency barriers that had sealed when the ship was damaged. In one of these areas, Yuki made the most important discovery of all. She found a room filled with screens and control panels that were still working. Symbols flowed across the displays in patterns that looked almost like language. "It's their communication system," Yuki said, her hands moving carefully over the alien controls. "And it's still connected to something. These signals are going out into space." Sarah felt her heart race. "Can you tell where they're going?" Yuki worked for hours, her computer connected to the alien systems through cables they had improvised. Finally, she looked up with wide eyes. "These aren't just communications," she said. "This is a navigation system. It's connected to other ships across the galaxy. I can see dozens of signals, maybe hundreds. And Sarah," she paused, "I think I know where they came from." The implications hit Sarah like a physical blow. This wasn't just a crashed ship. It was a window into an entire alien civilization. A civilization that had destroyed Earth's cities and left humans to die. But they had also left behind their technology. Over the following weeks, more scientists arrived at the site. The Australian government declared the area an international research zone. Experts from every country that still had functioning governments came to study the alien ship. What they found changed everything. The aliens, the Zephyrians, had been careless. They had left behind complete records of their technology, their star charts, and most importantly, their attitudes toward other species. Marcus discovered that the ship's weapons had been removed before it was abandoned. The aliens had taken anything they thought was valuable, but they had left behind what they considered broken or worthless. They had no idea how wrong they were. Sarah spent long nights reading the translated alien records. The Zephyrians saw themselves as the natural rulers of the galaxy. They believed that any species that couldn't build faster than light ships was barely intelligent. They had conquered dozens of worlds, enslaving or destroying every civilization they encountered. Earth was just their latest victim. The records showed they planned to return in 50 years to harvest any resources worth taking. They expected to find a dead world, or at best primitive survivors living in caves. The Zephyrians had made one fatal mistake. They assumed that because humans couldn't build starships, humans couldn't learn to build them. They thought their technology was beyond human understanding. But humans had something the aliens didn't expect: the ability to learn from anything, to adapt any tool to their needs, and to never give up. As Sarah stood in the alien ship's control room, watching her team work to understand systems beyond their current knowledge, she made a promise. The Zephyrians thought they had left worthless junk on a dead world. They were about to learn the difference between worthless and priceless, and between dead and very, very angry. 2 years had passed since Dr. Sarah Chen first entered the alien ship. The small research camp had grown into a massive complex that housed over 3,000 of Earth's brightest minds. Scientists, engineers, and technicians from every surviving nation worked together on what had become known as the Phoenix Project. Marcus Rodriguez stood in what used to be the ship's engine room, now converted into a human workshop. The original alien machinery lay in carefully labeled pieces around the room. His team had spent months taking apart each component, studying how it worked and figuring out how to build copies using Earth materials. The work was incredibly difficult. The alien technology operated on principles that human science barely understood. Their computers used quantum effects that Earth's best physicists were only beginning to grasp. Their metals were stronger than anything humans could make. Their energy systems produced power in ways that seemed to break the laws of physics. But Marcus had learned something important about the Zephyrians. They were rigid thinkers. Every piece of their technology was built to work perfectly under specific conditions. When something broke, they simply replaced it with an identical part. They never tried to fix things with whatever materials were available. Humans were different. When something broke, humans found a way to make it work with whatever they had. This difference would save the human race. "Show me the power coupling again," Marcus said to his assistant, Dr. Lisa Park. She was a young engineer who had learned to read alien technical manuals better than anyone else. Lisa held up 2 pieces of alien technology. One was original, a crystalline component that channeled energy in perfect patterns. The other was their human version, cruder, made from steel and copper, but functional. "The alien version is more efficient," Lisa explained. "But when it breaks, the whole system fails. Our version is less elegant, but if part of it gets damaged, the rest keeps working." This was the breakthrough that changed everything. Humans couldn't build exact copies of alien technology, but they could build something better in many ways. Human engineering was designed for a harsh world where nothing ever worked perfectly and everything eventually broke down. Dr. Yuki Tanaka had made even more important discoveries in the ship's computer systems. She had learned to communicate with the alien artificial intelligence that still ran some of the ship's functions. The AI was damaged, missing huge portions of its memory, but what remained was incredibly valuable. The AI doesn't understand why we want to fix the ship, Yuki told the weekly project meeting. To the Zephyrians, this ship is garbage. They stripped out everything valuable and left it to rot. The AI keeps asking when the recovery crew is coming to dismantle it completely. Sarah leaned forward in her chair. What have you told it? I told it we're the recovery crew, Yuki smiled. It's been very helpful. It's given me complete technical specifications for every system on the ship. The Zephyrians never imagined another species would be able to understand their technology, so they never programmed the AI to keep secrets. This was typical of Zephyrian thinking. They were so convinced of their superiority that they couldn't imagine being outsmarted by primitive species. This arrogance was becoming their greatest weakness. Marcus had been studying Zephyrian engineering philosophy through the technical manuals. They build everything to be perfect, he explained to his team. Every component is exactly the right size, uses exactly the right materials, operates under exactly the right conditions. It's beautiful, but it's also fragile. How is fragile beautiful? Asked Dr. James Wright, a metallurgist who had been working on alien hull materials. Because it shows complete control over their environment, Marcus replied. On their homeworld, everything is predictable. They've eliminated chaos, randomness, failure. Their technology reflects that. But Earth isn't like their homeworld. Here, things break, weather changes, and you have to make do with what you have. This insight led to the Phoenix Project's new approach. Instead of trying to copy alien technology exactly, they would rebuild it using human engineering principles. They would make it stronger, more adaptable, and more forgiving of damage. The work was slow but steady. Human metallurgists developed new alloys that could replace alien materials. Computer scientists wrote software that could interface with alien hardware. Physicists learned to harness quantum effects using Earth-based equipment. The most important breakthrough came when they figured out how to repair the ship's faster-than-light drive. The alien version used exotic matter that could only be created in special facilities. The human version used a combination of Earth elements arranged in quantum patterns that achieved the same effect. It's not as fast as the original, admitted Dr. Tomoko Sato, the physicist who led the drive project, but it will get us to the nearest star in 6 months instead of the original 3 months. More importantly, we can build more of them using materials we can find on Earth. The ship's weapon systems required a different approach. The original alien weapons were designed for precise, surgical strikes against helpless targets. They were devastating but limited. Marcus's team redesigned them for maximum psychological impact. The Zephyrians use fear as a weapon, Marcus explained. Their ships are meant to look terrifying and unstoppable, so we're going to give them a taste of their own medicine. The new weapons combined alien energy projection with human explosives. Instead of clean, precise beams, they would create massive explosions filled with fire and debris. They would look primitive and chaotic to Zephyrian eyes, which was exactly the point. Dr. Elena Vasquez joined the project in its 2nd year. She had been a fighter pilot before the invasion, one of the few who had actually engaged the alien ships in combat. Most pilots who fought the Zephyrians never came home. Elena survived because she was smart enough to know when to run. I shot everything we had at their ships, Elena told the project leaders. Missiles, guns, even ramming attacks. Nothing worked. Their shields stopped every conventional weapon we had. But you learned something about how they fight, Sarah observed. Elena nodded. They're predictable. They always attack the same way. Overwhelming force, perfect formations, no creativity. They won every battle because their technology was better, not because they were better tacticians. This became the foundation for human combat strategy. The Phoenix wouldn't try to match Zephyrian firepower. Instead, it would fight in ways the aliens couldn't predict or counter. As the 3rd year of the project began, the ship was starting to look like something new. The exterior still resembled the original alien vessel, but the interior had been completely rebuilt. Human-designed systems filled every space, connected by cables and pipes that followed human logic rather than alien aesthetics. The hybrid approach was working better than anyone had hoped. Systems that combined human and alien technology often performed better than either could alone. The ship was becoming something unique, a fusion of 2 completely different ways of thinking about engineering. Marcus stood in the rebuilt bridge, looking at displays that showed human text overlaid on alien interfaces. Around him, his team worked to integrate the final systems. The ship that had crashed as a symbol of human helplessness was being reborn as something the galaxy had never seen before. "How long until we can test the engines?" Sarah asked. Marcus smiled. 2 months for ground tests. 6 months until we can attempt orbital flight. Sarah felt a mix of excitement and fear. They were actually going to do this. They were going to take an alien warship and turn it into humanity's answer to 3 years of humiliation and loss. But first, they had to make sure it would work. The Zephyrians had left Earth thinking they had conquered another primitive world. They had no idea that their worthless garbage was about to become their worst nightmare. 5 years after the crash, the Phoenix was ready for its first test flight. Commander Elena Vasquez stood on the rebuilt bridge, watching her crew run through final system checks. The ship looked nothing like the elegant alien vessel that had crashed in the desert. Every surface showed signs of human modification: extra control panels, backup systems, and manual overrides that the original designers never imagined would be needed. The crew of 200 represented the best of what remained of human civilization. Engineers who had rebuilt cities from rubble, soldiers who had kept fighting when all hope seemed lost, scientists who had learned to work miracles with scrap metal and determination. Elena herself had changed during the years of preparation. The young fighter pilot who had once fled from alien ships was now a hardened commander who understood both human courage and Zephyrian weakness. She had studied every detail of the original invasion, learning from humanity's defeats to plan for their revenge. "All stations report ready," announced Lieutenant Sarah Kim from the communications console. The young officer had lost her entire family during the invasion, but she had channeled her grief into mastering the ship's hybrid communication systems. Marcus Rodriguez called out from the engineering station. "Fusion reactors are stable. Quantum drive is showing green across all parameters. We're as ready as we'll ever be." Elena nodded and activated the ship-wide communication system. "All hands, this is the captain. Today we find out if 5 years of work will pay off. Today we take our first step toward showing the galaxy that humanity refuses to die quietly." The Phoenix lifted off from its launch pad in the Australian desert, rising slowly on columns of blue fire. The human-built engines roared with a sound no Zephyrian ship had ever made, raw, powerful, and unmistakably defiant. As the ship climbed toward space, Elena felt the weight of everything they had accomplished. The Phoenix was more than just a rebuilt alien vessel. It was proof that humans could take any technology, no matter how advanced, and make it serve their purposes. The ship's weapon systems had been completely reimagined. Where the original Zephyrian weapons fired precise energy beams, the Phoenix mounted hybrid cannons that combined alien power with human explosive charges. The result was spectacular and terrifying. Weapons that could punch through alien shields while creating massive fireballs that would be visible for miles. Dr. Yuki Tanaka had worked wonders with the ship's computer systems. The original Zephyrian artificial intelligence had been reprogrammed to work with human crew members. Instead of the cold, emotionless responses typical of alien technology, the ship's AI now had personality and humor. "Captain," the AI's voice came through the bridge speakers with a distinctly human accent, "I'm detecting some unusual readings from the quantum communication array." Elena turned to the science station where Dr. Tanaka was monitoring the ship's sensors. "What kind of readings?" Yuki's fingers danced across her controls, pulling up data on the main screen. "It looks like someone is trying to contact the original ship. The signal is coming from the outer solar system." A chill ran through the bridge crew. Everyone knew what this meant. "The Zephyrians were coming back. How long until they arrive?" Elena asked. "Based on the signal strength and direction, I estimate 3 days," Yuki replied. "It's a small force, so probably a scout ship checking on their abandoned vessel." Elena smiled grimly. This was exactly what they had been preparing for. The Zephyrians expected to find a dead Hulk buried in the desert. Instead, they would encounter the Phoenix reborn and ready for war. "Set course for intercept," Elena ordered. "It's time to give our old enemies a proper welcome back to Earth." The Phoenix moved through space with a grace that surprised even its human crew. The hybrid propulsion system combined Zephyrian efficiency with human redundancy. If one engine failed, 3 backups could take its place. If the main computer went down, manual controls would keep the ship fighting. As they approached the outer solar system, the ship's sensors picked up the approaching Zephyrian vessel. It was smaller than the ships that had attacked Earth, but it still dwarfed most human spacecraft. Its sleek crystalline hull reflected sunlight in patterns that hurt human eyes to look at directly. "They're scanning us," reported Lieutenant Kim. "The readings suggest they're confused. Our ship matches their records, but something feels wrong to them." Elena activated the tactical display. The Zephyrian ship was moving in a standard patrol pattern, following protocols that assumed no resistance. They had no idea they were walking into a trap. "Dr. Tanaka, can you access their communication systems?" Elena asked. Yuki worked at her console using access codes they had found in the crashed ship's memory banks. "I'm in. They're reporting back to their fleet that the abandoned vessel appears to be operational. They're requesting instructions." "Jam their communications," Elena ordered. "I don't want them warning anyone else about what they're about to see." The Phoenix closed the distance to the Zephyrian ship, using the aliens' own identification codes to avoid triggering their defenses. By the time the enemy realized something was wrong, it was too late. "Fire," Elena commanded. The Phoenix's hybrid weapons lit up space with colors that had never been seen in Zephyrian warfare. Instead of clean energy beams, the human weapons produced expanding clouds of plasma and debris that overwhelmed the alien ship's shields through sheer chaos, rather than precision. The Zephyrian vessel tried to retreat, but Marcus had prepared for this. The Phoenix's engines were faster than the original specifications, enhanced with human innovations that the aliens couldn't match. "Their shields are down," reported the weapons officer. "Hull breaches on multiple decks. Disable them but don't destroy them," Elena ordered. "We need prisoners." The Phoenix closed in for the final attack, using tractor beams to prevent the damaged Zephyrian ship from escaping. Within minutes, the battle was over. The ship that had been abandoned as worthless junk had defeated a vessel from the galaxy's most powerful military force. The boarding operation revealed how completely the Zephyrians underestimated humanity. The alien crew of 12 had never imagined they might face resistance. Their weapons were locked in storage, and their emergency protocols assumed they would always have superior firepower. "They keep asking how we repaired their ship," reported Dr. Tanaka, who was interrogating the captured aliens. "They say it should have been impossible for a primitive species to understand their technology." Elena studied the captured Zephyrians through the medical bay's observation window. They were tall and elegant, with the same gray skin and large black eyes as the corpses found in the crashed ship. But where the dead aliens had seemed peaceful, these prisoners radiated confusion and fear. "What else did you learn from them?" Elena asked. "The Zephyrian Empire spans hundreds of star systems," Yuki reported. "They've conquered dozens of intelligent species over the past 1,000 years. Earth was just their most recent acquisition." Elena felt anger building in her chest. What happened to the other species they conquered? Some were enslaved. Others were eliminated when they proved troublesome. The Zephyrians keep detailed records of their conquests in a central database. "Can we access that database?" Yuki smiled. "Already working on it. The quantum communication array gives us access to their entire network. They never imagined anyone else would be able to use their own systems against them." Over the following days, the truth about the Zephyrian Empire became clear. Earth wasn't their first victim. It was just the latest in a long line of worlds they had destroyed or enslaved. Billions of beings across the galaxy lived under Zephyrian rule, their civilizations crushed beneath alien technology. But the interrogations also revealed a crucial weakness. The Zephyrians were overconfident to the point of arrogance. They believed their technological superiority made them naturally superior beings. They had never faced an enemy that could match their capabilities. "They think we're still primitives," Elena told her senior staff during a strategy meeting. "Even after we captured their ship, they believe this was a fluke. They can't accept that humans might actually be dangerous." Marcus leaned forward in his chair. "That's our advantage. They'll underestimate us right up until we're standing on their homeworld." Dr. Tanaka had been analyzing the data from the Zephyrian computer networks. "I found something interesting. There are resistance movements on dozens of conquered worlds, species that have been fighting the Zephyrians for decades, waiting for any sign that their oppressors can be defeated." Elena felt a new sense of purpose. The Phoenix wasn't just about human revenge anymore. It was about liberating an entire galaxy from tyranny. "How many ships like the Phoenix could we build?" she asked Marcus. With the resources of Earth, maybe 50 over the next 5 years. But if we could get help from other worlds, we could build hundreds, Elena finished. Dr. Tanaka, can you contact these resistance movements? Already started. The quantum communication network is perfect for coordinating across interstellar distances. Once word spreads that someone has actually defeated a Zephyrian ship, every resistance cell in the galaxy will want to know how we did it. Elena stood up and walked to the bridge's main view screen, which showed the stars beyond Earth's solar system. Somewhere out there, the Zephyrian Empire continued to oppress countless. 6 months after capturing the Zephyrian scout ship, Commander Elena Vasquez received the news she had been both expecting and dreading. Long-range sensors detected a massive energy signature approaching from deep space. The Zephyrians were returning to Earth in force. How many ships? Elena asked Dr. Yuki Tanaka, who was analyzing the sensor data from the Phoenix's bridge. At least 20 vessels, possibly more, Yuki replied, her voice tense. The lead ship is enormous, 3 times the size of our Phoenix. If I'm reading these signatures correctly, it's a command dreadnought. Elena studied the tactical display showing the approaching fleet. The Zephyrians had clearly decided that losing contact with their scout ship warranted a serious response. They were bringing enough firepower to turn Earth's surface to glass, but they still didn't know what they were really facing. The Phoenix hung in orbit above Earth, no longer alone. In the months since the first victory, human shipyards had worked around the clock to build 5 more vessels using the hybrid technology. They were smaller than the Phoenix, little more than heavily armed shuttles by Zephyrian standards, but they carried human crews and human determination. Status report from the fleet, called out. Lieutenant Sarah Kim from the communications station. All ships report ready for combat, came the response from Captain Martinez of the Defiance. Crews are at battle stations. We're ready to show these aliens what happens when you mess with humanity. Elena felt a mix of pride and fear as she looked at the display showing Earth's tiny fleet. 6 ships against 20? Human technology that was barely 5 years old against an empire that had ruled the galaxy for centuries. By any reasonable measure, they were hopelessly outmatched. But humans had never been particularly reasonable. Dr. Tanaka, what's the status of our surprise? Elena asked. Yuki smiled grimly. The quantum communication array is fully operational. The Zephyrians have no idea we can listen to their entire command network. We know their battle plans, their ship positions, even what their commanders had for breakfast. This was humanity's secret weapon. The very system the Zephyrians used to coordinate their empire had become a window into their thoughts and plans. The aliens were so confident in their technological superiority that they had never imagined another species could crack their encryption. They're ordering their ships into standard attack formation, Yuki reported, listening to the intercepted communications. The commander is complaining that dealing with primitives is beneath his rank. He wants to finish this quickly and return to more important duties. Elena's hands clenched into fists. Even now, facing ships they knew had destroyed one of their scouts, the Zephyrians still considered humans to be barely intelligent animals. That arrogance was about to cost them dearly. Signal the fleet, Elena ordered. Operation Payback is now in effect. The human ships spread out across Earth's orbital space, using the planet's gravity well and magnetic field to mask their movements. The Zephyrians approached in their traditional formation, a perfect geometric pattern that demonstrated their technological superiority while maximizing their firepower. It was exactly what Elena had hoped they would do. Enemy fleet is entering. Optimal range, reported the weapons officer. All ships are locked onto their targets. Elena watched the tactical display as the Zephyrian ships moved closer. Their shields were up, their weapons charged, and their formation was flawless. They looked unstoppable. They had no idea that 3 months ago, human engineers had hidden a dozen nuclear mines in the exact path they were following. Detonate the mines, Elena commanded. Space lit up with the fury of hydrogen fusion as 12 nuclear warheads exploded simultaneously around the Zephyrian fleet. The aliens' shields, designed to stop energy weapons and kinetic projectiles, proved useless against the chaotic destruction of nuclear fire. 3 Zephyrian ships were destroyed instantly. 5 more suffered critical damage as radioactive plasma tore through their hulls. The perfect formation dissolved into chaos as captains tried to understand what had just happened. All ships, attack now, Elena shouted into the communications system. The Phoenix and its sister ships emerged from their hiding places like predators striking at wounded prey. Their hybrid weapons tore into the confused Zephyrian formation, adding human fury to alien technology. The battle that followed was unlike anything in recorded galactic history. The Zephyrians tried to reform their lines and bring their superior firepower to bear, but the human ships refused to fight according to traditional rules. They used guerrilla tactics, hit-and-run attacks, and weapons that created maximum chaos rather than clean destruction. "The command ship is trying to retreat," reported Captain Martinez from the Defiance. "Should we pursue?" "Negative," Elena replied. "Let them run, but make sure they get a good look at us first." The Phoenix positioned itself directly in front of the fleeing dreadnought, close enough that the Zephyrian sensors could scan every detail of the rebuilt ship. Elena wanted them to see exactly what humanity had done with their worthless technology. "Open a communication channel to their command ship," Elena ordered. The main screen flickered to life, showing the bridge of the Zephyrian dreadnought. The alien commander was tall and elegant like all his species, but his large black eyes were wide with shock and confusion. "I am Commander Zektar of the Galactic Fleet," the alien said, his voice translated by the ship's computer. "You cannot be what our sensors indicate. Primitive species do not possess such capabilities." Elena stepped forward, making sure the alien could see her clearly. "I'm Commander Elena Vasquez of the Human Space Force. This is our ship now, built from the garbage you left behind when you murdered our people." The alien's expression changed from confusion to something that might have been fear. "Impossible. Your species lacks the intelligence to understand our technology. Your species lacks the imagination to understand ours," Elena replied. "You see a broken ship and abandon it. We see raw materials and build something better." Commander Zektar looked around his bridge at the damage reports flowing in from his fleet. Half his ships were destroyed or crippled. The rest were fleeing in disorder. His perfect formation had been shattered by tactics no civilized species would ever use. "This changes nothing," the alien said, but his voice lacked conviction. "You have won a single battle against a minor expedition. The Empire will send 1,000 ships to crush your primitive world." Elena smiled coldly. "Let them come. We'll be waiting." The communication channel closed as the Zephyrian ships jumped to faster-than-light speed, carrying news of their defeat back to the Empire. Elena watched them go, knowing that everything had just changed. "Damage report," she called out. "Minor hull damage to the Defiance and Vengeance," reported Lieutenant Kim. "No casualties. All ships operational." Elena looked around the bridge at her crew. They had just achieved the impossible. A primitive species had defeated the galaxy's most powerful military force. But she knew this was only the beginning. "Dr. Tanaka, what are the Zephyrians saying on their communication network?" Yuki worked at her console, intercepting messages from across the Empire. "Chaos. Half of them think the reports are impossible. The other half are demanding massive retaliation." "But Elena..." She paused, looking up with excitement. "There's something else. Resistance movements on 12 different worlds are requesting contact. Word is spreading that someone finally stood up to the Zephyrians and won." Elena felt a new sense of purpose settling over her. The Phoenix had been built for revenge, but it was becoming something more. A symbol of hope for every oppressed species in the galaxy. Marcus Rodriguez joined them on the bridge, grinning despite the exhaustion on his face. "The captured Zephyrian ship is secure. Their database contains everything. Star charts, military codes, intelligence reports on resistance movements. And," Elena prompted, "and we now know the location of every Zephyrian military base, every conquered world, and every species they've enslaved. More importantly, we know which ones are ready to fight back." Elena walked to the main view screen, looking out at the stars where the Zephyrian fleet had disappeared. Somewhere out there, the Empire was probably mobilizing its full military might to crush the upstart humans who had dared to resist. But they were too late. The secret was out. Zephyrian technology could be beaten. Their ships could be destroyed. Their empire could fall. And humanity, with typical human stubbornness, was about to prove that no tyranny lasts forever when faced with beings who refuse to stay conquered. "Set course for the outer system," Elena ordered. "We have work to do." The Phoenix and its escort ships turned away from Earth, heading toward the stars where countless species waited for liberation. Behind them, human shipyards worked frantically to build more vessels. each one carrying the promise that the age of Zephyrian dominance was ending. The aliens had made one fatal mistake when they abandoned their ship on Earth. They had given humanity the tools to fight back. And humans, as they were about to discover, were very good at turning tools into weapons. 2 years had passed since the first victory over the Zephyrian fleet. Commander Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the Phoenix, but she was no longer looking at a single ship. Through the viewscreen, she could see a fleet of over 300 vessels stretching across space, like a constellation of hope. The ships came from dozens of different worlds. Some were built using human Zephyrian hybrid technology. Others were crafted by species that had been developing their own resistance for decades. Each vessel was different, representing the unique engineering traditions of its builders. But they all shared one thing in common. They carried crews who refused to accept Zephyrian rule. Fleet status report. Elena called out to Lieutenant Sarah Kim, now promoted to commander and serving as fleet communications coordinator. All ships report ready for the final assault, Kim replied. The Corvani battle group is positioned on the left flank. The Thornek heavy cruisers are taking the center. Human ships will lead the right-wing assault. Elena nodded, studying the tactical display that showed the Zephyrian homeworld ahead of them. Zephyria Prime hung in space like a blue-green jewel, surrounded by defensive stations and patrol fleets. It was the heart of an empire that had ruled the galaxy for over 1,000 years. Today, that rule would end. Dr. Yuki Tanaka looked up from her science station, her face showing the strain of 2 years of constant warfare. The quantum communication network is fully compromised. Every Zephyrian military facility in the galaxy is receiving orders to fall back and defend the homeworld. They're abandoning their outer territories. How many ships are they gathering? Elena asked. Our best estimate is over 1,000 vessels, Yuki replied, but many of them are patrol ships and transports pressed into military service. They're desperate. The desperation was understandable. For 2 years, the Liberation Fleet had moved from system to system, freeing conquered worlds and adding their ships to the growing rebellion. Each victory had proven that Zephyrian technology was not invincible, that their military tactics could be defeated, and that their empire was built on fear rather than true strength. Marcus Rodriguez joined Elena on the bridge, his hair now gray from the stress of managing the fleet's hybrid technology systems. All weapon systems are operational across the fleet. The new gravitational bombs are loaded and ready. Elena smiled grimly. The gravitational bombs were humanity's latest contribution to the war effort. Weapons that used Zephyrian gravity manipulation technology in ways its creators had never imagined. Instead of precise gravity fields for ship movement, humans had weaponized the technology to create localized gravitational anomalies that could tear apart entire fleets, signal from the Corvani flagship, reported Commander Kim. Admiral, Thekvar sends his compliments and says his people are ready to reclaim their honor. The Corvani had been one of the first species to join the Liberation Fleet. Their homeworld had been conquered 300 years ago, and they had spent generations planning their revenge. When the Phoenix first contacted their resistance movement, they had provided detailed intelligence about Zephyrian military installations and tactics. Signal from the Thornek battle group, Kim continued. Commander Grax reports that her heavy assault ships are ready to break through the outer defenses. The Thornek were warriors by nature, their culture built around honor in battle. They had resisted Zephyrian rule for over 50 years before the Liberation Fleet arrived. Their ships were crude but incredibly tough, designed to absorb massive damage while delivering devastating close-range attacks. Elena looked around the bridge at her crew, humans, Corvani, Thornek, and representatives from a dozen other species. Each had their own reasons for fighting, but they had all learned to work together in ways the rigid Zephyrian Empire could never understand. All ships. This is Admiral Vasquez, Elena announced over the fleet communication system. Today we end 1,000 years of tyranny. Today we prove that no empire built on fear and oppression can stand against beings who fight for freedom. The fleet moved forward as one, 300 ships carrying the hopes of billions of oppressed beings. Ahead of them, the Zephyrian defensive fleet moved into position, their formations perfect as always, their ships gleaming with technological superiority. But Elena had learned something important over the past 2 years. Technology was only as good as the beings who used it. And the Zephyrians, for all their advanced capabilities, had never learned to adapt, to improvise, or to fight with desperation born of love for freedom. Enemy fleet is moving to intercept, reported the tactical officer. They're using Formation 7, standard defensive pattern for homeworld protection. Elena studied the enemy formation on the tactical display. It was exactly what she had expected. A layered defense designed to maximize firepower while protecting the most important ships. It was textbook Zephyrian strategy, which meant it was about to be torn apart by tactics they had never encountered. Execute Plan Phoenix, Elena ordered. The Liberation fleet split into dozens of smaller groups, each following a different approach vector. The Corvani ships used their advanced stealth technology to disappear from Zephyrian sensors. The Thornek battle group charged straight at the enemy center, drawing their fire while human ships flanked from unexpected angles. The gravitational bomb struck first, creating chaos in the perfectly ordered Zephyrian formation. Ships that had maintained precise distances suddenly found themselves pulled into collision courses. The elegant defensive pattern collapsed as captains struggled to deal with weapons that defied their understanding of proper warfare. Breakthrough achieved on all fronts, reported Commander Kim. Corvani stealth ships have penetrated the inner defenses. Thornek assault groups are engaging the command vessels. Human squadrons are targeting the communication hubs. Elena watched the battle unfold on the tactical display, seeing 2 years of planning and preparation come together. Every species in the Liberation fleet was fighting according to their strengths, using tactics that the Zephyrians had never faced and could not counter. But the real victory was not military. It was philosophical. The Zephyrian Empire was built on the belief that technological superiority meant natural superiority, that some species were born to rule, while others were born to serve, that order and perfection were more important than freedom and creativity. The Liberation fleet proved every one of those beliefs wrong. Zephyrian command ship is requesting surrender. Terms, reported the communications officer with barely concealed amazement. Elena felt a moment of triumph, but it was tempered by the knowledge of how much had been lost over the past 1,000 years. Billions of beings had died under Zephyrian rule. Entire civilizations had been erased. No victory could bring them back. Put me through to their commander, Elena said. The main screen showed the bridge of the Zephyrian command, Dreadnought. The alien commander looked older than the others Elena had encountered. His gray skin marked with scars and his large eyes filled with something that might have been respect. I am Admiral Zekmor of the Imperial Fleet, the alien said. I formally surrender my forces to the Liberation Coalition. Elena studied the alien's face, seeing resignation but not defeat. Why, she asked. Your ships could fight to the last vessel. Your people could retreat to other worlds. The Zephyrian admiral was quiet for a long moment. Because you have proven something we thought impossible. You have shown that unity of purpose is stronger than unity of species. That determination can overcome technological advantage. That freedom, he paused. That freedom is worth dying for. Elena felt a strange sense of sadness for this alien who had finally understood what his empire had been missing. What happens now? The empire is finished, Admiral Zekmor replied. Some of my people will fight to the end, unable to accept that we were wrong. Others will try to make amends for what we have done. Most will simply try to find a place in whatever comes next. Elena looked out at the liberated fleet surrounding the Zephyrian homeworld. Ships from dozens of species worked together to secure the system and begin the massive task of dismantling an empire. It would take years, maybe decades, to undo 1,000 years of oppression, but it would be done. Not by conquest or force, but by cooperation and shared determination. Dr. Tanaka, Elena called out, send a message to every world in the former Zephyrian Empire. Tell them the war is over. Tell them they're free. As the message spread across the galaxy through the quantum communication network, Elena thought about the crashed ship that had started it all. The Zephyrians had left it behind as worthless junk, never imagining that it would become the seed of their downfall. They had been wrong about so many things. Wrong about human intelligence. Wrong about the strength of the oppressed. Wrong about the power of hope. But most importantly, they had been wrong about the difference between having the best technology and knowing how to use any technology to fight for what mattered most. The Phoenix hung in space, above the liberated Zephyrian homeworld, no longer alone but surrounded by hundreds of ships carrying beings who had chosen freedom over safety, cooperation over dominance, and hope over despair. The ultimate revenge was not destruction. It was transformation. The galaxy would be rebuilt, not as an empire ruled by fear,